Today's video is going to be about the circular flow model of economic activity. Okay, so we're going to start off with the most basic type of circular flow model that there is. We're going to look at two players, households and firms, and how they interact. Well, households and firms interact in two different ways. They interact in what's called the product market and the resource market. Let's cover the product market first. Okay, so how do firms and households interact in the product market? Well, let's assume that households have some amount of wealth. They are going to take some of that wealth and through the product market purchase goods and services from firms. Okay, so that means that if we are looking at the green flow, this is the flow of money. Okay, this is the flow of money. And then the blue flow is the flow of goods and services. Okay, so goods and services are produced by firms and they are purchased by households. Firms are the suppliers of goods and services and households are the demanders. In order for exchange to happen, households have to give up some portion of their wealth in order to get the good or service. Okay. Now, how do households and firms interact in the resource market? So let's put the resource market down at the bottom and say that households and firms interact through the resource market. Well, households have this wealth. How did they get this wealth? Well, let's say that they put their labor into the resource market. So in the resource market, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and production technology all live in the resource market. Okay, and households put their resources into the into the resource market and are able to get money in exchange for their resources. So let's call this the resources. So households are putting resources into the resource market. They're selling their labor, they're selling their land, their capital, their entrepreneurship, production technology. Remember, at the head of every firm is a household. Okay, Bill Gates, yes, he owns a very successful firm, but he is also the head of a household. So that's how we are able to say that households own all of the resources. So households put their resources into the market and firms spend some money paying for those resources. Okay, so this is the most basic look at economic activity that we have. We have not included in the government yet, and we'll do that in just a second. But right now we just have households and firms, and we are able to see that the product and resource flow of goods and services is going to be exactly equal to the money flow of goods and services. So that means that we have just proved that gross domestic product is equal to gross domestic income, providing there are no leakages or injections into this market. And we'll go over those in a second. But this is a very important equation. Gross domestic product is equal to gross domestic income. We have a circular economy. As money moves from households to firms, back to households and firms, and products are moving the opposite way in resources, then we have a closed economy. Right now, we don't have any sort of international trade. We don't have anything to do with the rest of the world. So this is our closed economy, and the size of the economy doesn't change. Goods and services and money just move throughout it. So now let's add in the United States government. All right, let's put the government right there in the middle of our circular flow model. Well, the United States government gets money in the form of tax revenues. The majority of their tax revenues comes from households, but some money comes from corporate taxes from firms. So now that they have this money, okay, this revenue that comes in, what are the things that the government has to do with the money? Well, the first thing that they do is one of the things, not necessarily the first things that they do, but they take some of that money and they spend it on the billions of dollars of goods and services that they purchase from firms through the product market in a given year. Okay. They also take money that they have and buy resources, buy labor, buy capital, buy entrepreneurship, buy technology, all the different things that they have to purchase in a year in terms of resources. Okay, so we have the dual flow down there of resources and money. Okay, so now let's see how a closed economy changes once we add in international trade. Okay. So let's say that we decide to add up here in the corner, we're going to put in over here ROW, which symbolizes rest of world. How does the United States interact with the rest of the world? Well, one thing that we do is we take products from the United States, we produce them in the United States, and we sell them to the rest of the world. Okay, and when we sell them to the rest of the world, we get their money coming into our circular flow model. Okay, so that means that we have both product leaving the United States, and we are exchanging that for money coming into the United States. Okay, so when we have money coming into the United States, this is what we call, these are our exports, and this is what we call an injection into the circular flow model. By following the money, we can see that money is coming into the United States. Okay, now let's look at what happens when we have imports. Okay, imports means that we are buying a good or service that was produced outside of the United States and it is coming into our market. So that means that their good or service is coming into the United States and we are exchanging that for some of our financial capital, some of our money. So that means that we have money leaving the United States. So that means if we're following the monetary flow, then when we have money leaving the United States, this is what we call a leakage. Okay, the last thing that we want to cover here, well, when we interact with the rest of the world, we also sometimes send transfer payments to the rest of the world. We might have households, and I don't want to draw lines all over this, but we might have households over here that are sending money to family members in the rest of the world. We might have international aid that the government, firms, and households are sending to the rest of the world. Okay, those are what we call transfer payments. Now, our United States government also has transfer payments domestically. So for example, and I'm just going to stick it over here because I don't want to muck everything up, but let's say, and I did choose a lighter green so that we can kind of see that this is a little bit different. So this is transfer payments. Now a transfer payments is when we have money that is not being exchanged for a good or service. Okay, so these are transfer payments. Okay, right through that. Okay, transfer payments. So any sort of our social programs, those are all transfer payments. The United States giving money for Medi-Cal, Medicaid, Social Security income. Yes, some of that has been paid in, but they're transfer payments out of our government where we are not getting a good or service back. Okay, that pretty much wraps up the introduction to the circular flow model of economic activity. Remember that we are going to come back to this time and time again when we talk about gross domestic product and gross domestic income being equal, and you have now been taught how to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, that as long as there are no leakages or injections into the model, that the circular flow model of economic activity proves that gross domestic product and gross domestic income are equal within a statistical error.